Look, I'm not saying humans are the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Ambassador Zeklex Thor clicked his mandibles together nervously, antenna twitching in what his species considered a diplomatic gesture. I'm just saying that any species that considers jogging to be a casual hobby is fundamentally disturbing on a psychological level. Oh, come on. Lieutenant Rain Winters rolled her eyes, leaning back in her chair with the casual indifference that made the Tiskri diplomat's exoskeleton quiver. That's just basic cardiovascular maintenance. Wait until you see what we do for fun. The meeting room aboard the Galactic Confederation vessel Harmonious Exchange had been designed to accommodate 27 different species' anatomical and atmospheric requirements, which meant it was a bizarre hodgepodge of furnishings, environmental chambers, and translation devices. Somehow, despite the Confederation's best efforts at inclusivity, it still managed to look like a fever dream designed by a committee of acid-tripping interior decorators with conflicting religious beliefs. Admiral Kostevk, a gelatinous mass of semi-transparent purple tissue encased in what humans had affectionately nicknamed a snot mech, gurgled something that the translator interpreted as, "The human delegation is being deliberately obtuse. Their planet has been classified as a Class 9 death world for very good reasons. Which we've been trying to tell you is a massive overreaction." Commander Leo Walsh chimed in, absently spinning a stylus between his fingers at a speed that made several delegates track the movement like predators fixated on prey. Earth is cozy. The Dravenid representative, resembling nothing so much as a 6-foot-tall dust bunny with eyes, shuddered visibly. Your oceans contain creatures that kill for sport. Orcas are just playful, Winters protested. They throw seals 40 feet in the air for entertainment before consuming them. The dust bunny countered, its voice a horrified whisper. Yeah, but... Winters searched for a defense and found none. Okay, that's fair. The tension in the room was as thick as the specialized breathing fluid in the Aquarian representative's tank. This was the 17th meeting between Earth's diplomatic corps and the Galactic Confederation in as many days, and they were no closer to resolving the fundamental issue. Humanity had been invited to join the interstellar community based on their art, philosophy, and the peaceful signals they'd been broadcasting for centuries, only for the welcoming committee to discover, upon arrival, that humans were essentially space orcs who had somehow developed poetry before figuring out they probably shouldn't live on a planet that actively tried to murder them on a daily basis. Admiral Kstevek's mech whirred as it shifted position. Despite the concerning aspects of human physiology and psychology, the Confederation remains committed to peaceful integration. However, we must insist on containment protocols. Containment? Walsh's casual demeanor vanished. We discussed this. Earth is not accepting any form of quarantine. Not quarantine, Ambassador Zeklex Thor clarified quickly, his translator struggling to convey his placating tone. Safeguards. For instance, human military vessels would be limited to defensive armaments only, and... Winters barked a laugh that made 3 different species flinch. You want us to remove our offensive capabilities, when there are, 7? Known hostile civilizations in this sector alone? 8, actually. The Dravenid representative corrected, then immediately regretted drawing attention to itself as Winters fixed it with a stare. 8, even better. She smiled in a way that showcased far too many teeth. So your proposal is that we join your little club, but deliberately make ourselves vulnerable to the nasties waiting in the cosmic woods. Hard pass, dust mop. Lieutenant, Walsh said sharply, though his lips twitched with suppressed amusement. The meeting devolved from there, with various representatives expressing concerns about everything from humanity's baffling tolerance for capsaicin, you eat pain for pleasure, to their disturbing ability to repair broken bones. You regrow your internal support structures? By the time the human delegation returned to their ship, the Tenacious Bastard, a name that had required 4 separate translation revisions to avoid causing a diplomatic incident, Admiral Kostevk and his team were still debating whether humans qualified as apex predators or some form of sentient disaster. I need a drink, Winters declared, collapsing into a chair in the ship's officer lounge. Preferably something that would make at least 3 of those delegates dissolve on contact. Can we not joke about dissolving the ambassadors? Captain Eliza Donovan sighed, entering behind them. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her expression suggested she had heard about the dust mop comment. I'm getting comms from Earth Central every 20 minutes asking if we've managed to avoid causing an interstellar incident today. And? Walsh prompted, already at the dispenser requesting what the ship's AI had determined was the closest approximation to Scotch it could synthesize. And I keep having to say not yet, which is not inspiring confidence. Donovan took the glass Walsh offered and dropped into the seat opposite Winters. This is important, people. The Confederation has technology that could revolutionize everything from medicine to energy production. We need this alliance. Winters leaned forward, her expression serious for once. With all due respect, Captain, they're asking us to castrate ourselves militarily while surrounded by potentially hostile forces. That's not an alliance. It's a prelude to becoming a protectorate at best, a sacrifice at worst. They're scared of us, Walsh added more softly. You've seen the reports. Our physiology alone makes us walking nightmares to most of these species. We're stronger, faster, more durable. We can survive radiation levels that would cook most of them, pressures that would crush them, temperatures that would freeze or boil them. And let's not forget they discovered our entertainment, Winters added with a snort. Poor Ambassador Thor nearly had a cardiac event, all 6 of them, when he found our historical battle reenactments. He thought we were documenting actual ongoing conflicts. Donovan rubbed her temples. I'm aware, but we need to find a compromise. The ship's AI, Area, chose that moment to interrupt. Captain, incoming transmission from Confederation High Command. Priority Alpha. Donovan frowned. That's unusual. Put it through. The holographic display in the center of the lounge flickered to life, revealing Admiral Kustvik's gelatinous form, pulsing with what appeared to be agitation. Captain Donovan. The translation came through with uncharacteristic urgency. We have an emergency situation. The Vika Thraxis fleet has breached Confederation space. 3 outposts have already gone dark. Donovan was on her feet instantly. The Vika Thraxis? I thought they were contained beyond the Cygnus Arm. They were. Now they are not. The Admiral's normal diplomatic veneer had vanished. Their advance fleet will reach Outpost Sigma 9 in approximately 6 hours. There are 14,000 civilians at that installation, predominantly Alorians and T-Scree. The squishy ones and the bug guys, Winters muttered to Walsh, who nodded grimly. What does this have to do with us, Admiral? Donovan asked, though she already knew. Sigma 9 is 3 hours from your current position. The nearest Confederation battle group is 7 hours away. The Admiral's mech seemed to slump slightly. Captain, I am requesting assistance. The 3 human officers exchanged glances. You want us to engage the Vika Thraxis? Donovan clarified. The same species you described yesterday as living embodiments of evolutionary aggression? Yes. The Admiral's translator conveyed no emotion, but the rapid color shifts in his gelatinous form spoke volumes. The same Vika Thraxis that your briefing materials indicate have invaded 6 systems in the last decade with no survivors. Yes. And you want the ship that you yesterday insisted should have its weapons downgraded to defensive capabilities only? There was a long pause. The Confederation formally rescinds that request, Captain Donovan. Winters didn't even try to hide her smile. The tenacious bastard dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Sigma 9 system, sensors immediately sweeping for signs of the Vika Thraxis fleet. Contact, the tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Beckett, announced. 9 vessels approaching Sigma 9. Configuration matches Confederation records of Vika Thraxis war barges. On screen, Donovan ordered, and the bridge view screen filled with the approaching enemy ships. They resembled nothing so much as massive metallic crustaceans, their hulls covered in overlapping plates that Confederation intelligence indicated were harvested from the exoskeletons of conquered species. Charming. Time to intercept? 22 minutes until they reach the outpost, Captain. Donovan nodded. Open a channel to Outpost Sigma 9. The screen split to show a frantic-looking Alorian, its tentacled face analogs writhing in distress. Human vessel. The evacuation is underway, but we have only managed to move 30% of our population to shelters. Our defensive systems are inadequate against the Vika Thraxis weapons. Understood. Continue your evacuation. We'll handle the incoming fleet. Donovan cut the transmission and turned to her bridge crew. Tactical assessment? Beckett was frowning at his console. 9 ships, approximately equivalent to Confederation heavy cruisers in terms of firepower. Their hulls incorporate some kind of organic metallic composite that adapts to energy weapons. Kinetics seem to be their weakness, but you need to hit them hard enough to break through those armored plates. So we're outgunned and outnumbered, Walsh summarized from his position at the operations console. Against any normal enemy, yes, Beckett agreed with a slow smile. But the Vika Thraxis have never encountered humans before. And we have one advantage they don't, Winters added from the helm. Donovan raised an eyebrow. Which is? We're absolutely batshit crazy by galactic standards. Winters grinned. Permission to fly like a human, Captain? A slow smile spread across Donovan's face. "Permission granted, Lieutenant. Commander Walsh. Activate combat protocols Epsilon 7. Walsh's eyes widened. Epsilon 7? That's completely insane? Yes. Donovan settled back in her command chair. Let's show these Veek Thraxes why Deathworlders make bad enemies. The Veek Thraxes fleet commander, Grok, observed the approaching vessel with the equivalent of contempt. A single ship? He communicated to his subordinates through the biochemical network that linked all Veek Thraxes. The Confederation grows more pathetic with each conquest. This vessel configuration is unknown, his second responded. It does not match any Confederation registry. Irrelevant. Prepare the harvesting beams. Their technology and biomass will be added to our own. The VK Thraxis had built their empire on a simple principle: consume, adapt, evolve. Every species they encountered was either subjugated and farmed for resources or incorporated directly into their technology. They had never known defeat, only setbacks. As the strange vessel approached, Grok felt a momentary pulse of something unfamiliar. The biochemical network translated it as caution, which was so foreign to his experience that he immediately purged the sensation. The unknown ship accelerated suddenly, its velocity increasing beyond what should have been structurally possible. "Target locked," his weapons officer reported. "Harvesting beam charging." Then the universe went sideways. "Executing Crazy Ivan!" Winters shouted, hands flying across her console as she cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters at full power, sending the tenacious bastard into a spin that would have killed most species through G-forces alone. The humans on board, secured in their inertial dampening chairs and pumped full of anti-blackout drugs, merely grunted as their bodies were pressed into the cushioning. The ship rotated a full 180 degrees while maintaining its forward momentum, bringing its aft weapons to bear on the lead Veek Thraxis vessel. "Fire tubes 1 through 4, Donovan ordered. The tenacious bastard shuddered as 4 kinetic penetrators, essentially massive tungsten rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, launched from the ship's aft tubes. On the tactical display, they watched as the rods struck the lead Veek Thraxis ship. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball, just 4 neat holes punched through the alien vessel from bow to stern, its systems failing as atmosphere vented from the precision wounds. "Direct hit," Beckett reported unnecessarily. "1 down, 8 to go." The remaining Veek Thraxis ships altered their formation, splitting into 2 groups in an obvious attempt to flank the human vessel. "They're adapting," Walsh observed. "Tactical pattern suggests they've never seen kinetic weapons of this caliber before." "Well then," Winters said with a predatory grin, "let's see what else they've never seen before. Permission to execute Maneuver Delta 9, Captain?" Donovan nodded. "Make it so." Delta 9 was a maneuver that had been theoretical until humanity had reached the stars, using the gravitational pull of a nearby stellar body to slingshot a vessel at speeds that would tear most ships apart. The tenacious bastard, however, had been built by a species that had evolved on a planet that routinely tried to kill them with everything from microorganisms to weather. Winters set a course directly toward Sigma 9's star, the engines screaming in protest as she pushed them beyond recommended tolerances. "Are we diving into the star?" the comm officer asked, eyes wide. "Not quite," Walsh explained, his voice strained against the G-forces. "We're going to skim the corona, use the gravitational pull to accelerate, then release at the optimal moment to go really fucking fast in an unexpected direction." Winters finished for him. "Hang on to your lunches, people." Aboard the Veek Thraxis command ship, Grok was experiencing an unfamiliar emotion: confusion. "The vessel is approaching the star," his navigator reported. "Their trajectory will take them into the corona." "They seek self-destruction?" Grok wondered aloud. "Perhaps they are more honorable than most Confederation weaklings." "No," his science officer interjected. "They are adjusting course to utilize the star's gravitational field. This tactic is unexpected." Grok watched as the alien ship skimmed the outer layers of the star, its shields glowing white-hot with the strain. By all logic, the vessel should have been torn apart, but instead it was accelerating, using the star's gravity well like a slingshot. "Recalculate intercept," he ordered. But before his crew could comply, the alien ship had released from its solar orbit, shooting toward the Veek Thraxis fleet at a velocity that their targeting systems couldn't track effectively. "Evasive action," Grok commanded, but it was too late. The alien vessel tore through the formation, releasing what appeared to be primitive explosive devices, missiles, as it passed. The Veek Thraxis ships, with their sophisticated energy shields designed to repel particle beams and plasma weapons, had no effective defense against the simple kinetic force of the explosions. 3 more ships were crippled in the attack, venting atmosphere and debris into space. For the first time in his long life, Grok felt something akin to fear crawl through his biochemical network. 5 down, 4 to go, Beckett reported, his voice tight with restrained excitement. Engineering reports the heat sinks are at maximum capacity. We can't pull that maneuver again without a cooldown period. Won't need to, Donovan said calmly. The remaining ships are regrouping. They're not used to losing. Captain, the comm officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the VK Thraxis command ship. Put it through. The view screen flickered to show a creature that resembled a nightmarish fusion of insect and reptile, with multiple compound eyes and a chitinous exoskeleton covered in what looked disturbingly like trophies from other species. Unknown vessel, the translator rendered in a flat mechanical voice. You fight with unexpected skill for Confederation allies. We're not Confederation, Donovan responded, leaning forward in her chair. We're humans, from Earth. There was a pause as the translation was processed. Then, humans. Your species is unknown to us. Your combat tactics are primitive but effective. The Victhraxis offer you the honor of surrender. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be preserved within our collective. Winters snorted loudly. Did this bug just offer to assimilate us? Donovan held up a hand for silence. That's very generous of you, but I have a counteroffer. She smiled thinly. You leave Confederation space immediately, or we finish destroying your fleet and send the wreckage back to wherever you came from as a warning. The Victhraxis commander made a sound that the translator couldn't process, but which didn't require much interpretation. You are one vessel, we are 4. Your destruction is inevitable. About that, Donovan nodded to Walsh, who typed a quick command into his console. Outside, in the vacuum of space, 8 objects that had previously been masquerading as debris from the earlier battle suddenly lit up with engine signatures. We took the liberty of deploying our siren drones during our little star maneuver, Donovan explained conversationally. Stealth infiltration reconnaissance and engagement nodes. They're currently attached to your remaining vessels, including your command ship. Each one carries a modest payload, just enough to crack those pretty armored hulls of yours. The Victhraxis commander's posture changed subtly. You bluff. Commander Walsh, please detonate the siren on their rearmost support vessel, the small one. Walsh pressed a button, and on the tactical display, one of the Victhraxis ships suddenly split apart, as if dissected by an invisible knife, its hull plates peeling back as secondary explosions rippled through its interior. Was that a bluff? Donovan asked pleasantly. Now, as I was saying, leave Confederation space, or become a very educational example for the rest of your species. 3 hours later, the tenacious bastard hovered protectively over Outpost Sigma-9 as the last of the Victhraxis ships limped away at sublight speeds, having agreed to Donovan's terms with what passed for grudging respect among their kind. The bridge was quieter now, the adrenaline of battle fading into the calm competence that characterized Earth's best officers. Incoming transmission from Admiral Kostvik, the comm officer announced. Donovan, looking slightly worse for wear but still commanding, nodded. On screen, the Admiral's gelatinous form appeared, pulsing with colors that the translator didn't attempt to interpret. Captain Donovan, the Confederation has received your battle telemetry and the report from Outpost Sigma-9. Your actions have saved 14,000 lives. Just doing our job, Admiral. A job that no Confederation vessel could have accomplished. The Admiral's mech shifted slightly. The defensive tactics you employed were unconventional. Winters coughed something that sounded suspiciously like understatement of the century. The Victhraxis have never retreated before, the Admiral continued. In all our records, they have either conquered or been temporarily contained. This represents a significant development. Donovan leaned forward. Admiral, with all due respect, this is what humans do. We protect our own. And if you want us as allies, we'll protect yours too. But we do it our way, with our ships, our weapons, and our tactics intact. There was a long pause. The Confederation Security Council has reviewed your actions and the results. While many members find your methods concerning, none can argue with the outcome. Another pause. The containment protocols have been formally withdrawn. Earth will be invited to join the Confederation as a full military ally, with no restrictions on your defensive or offensive capabilities. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Further, the Admiral continued, the Council has requested that Earth consider establishing a joint military training program with Confederation forces. It seems we have much to learn from Deathworlders. Donovan smiled. We'd be honored, Admiral. And perhaps in return, you can teach us some of that legendary Confederation diplomacy. I have a feeling we're going to need it. Indeed. The Admiral's colors shifted to what might have been amusement. I should warn you, Captain. News of today's battle is spreading quickly through Confederation space. You may find the perception of humans has evolved. Oh? Donovan raised an eyebrow. How so? Until today, many species viewed humans as dangerous curiosities. Now, after witnessing your defense of Sigma-9 against an enemy we have failed to defeat for centuries, you are being called something else. Which is? Protectors. The Admiral's form pulsed once more. It seems the galaxy has discovered that Deathworlders make the most formidable allies. The Confederation formally welcomes Earth to the stars, Captain. On our terms, but also on yours. As the transmission ended, Winters leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile. Well, would you look at that? All we had to do was blow up a few ships, and suddenly we're the cool kids at the galactic lunch table. Walsh snorted. I think it was less about blowing things up and more about the fact that we did it to protect others. That's what they don't get about humans, Donovan said, looking out at the stars beyond the view screen. They see our capacity for violence and assume it's our defining characteristic. They don't understand that we developed that capacity precisely because we care so deeply. We fight hardest for what we love most. So what now, Captain? Beckett asked. Donovan smiled. Now? Now we introduce the galaxy to the concept of friends in high places. And maybe, just maybe, teach them that sometimes the most dangerous species in the room is exactly the one you want watching your back. 6 months later, the Galactic Confederation headquarters on neutral planet Harmonious was hosting its first human diplomatic delegation, this time with considerably more respect and considerably less condescension. Ambassador ZKLX Thor, who had been promoted following the Sigma-9 incident, as it was now called, clicked his mandibles nervously as he approached the human group. Ambassador Winters, he greeted, his translator conveying a warmth that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. The Council is ready to receive Earth's formal acceptance of membership. Rain Winters, now sporting diplomatic credentials instead of a lieutenant's insignia, grinned. Lead the way, Ambassador ZKLX Thor. Or should I say friend? The Tiskari diplomat's antennae twitched in what humans now recognized as pleasure. Friend, he agreed. Though I must confess, even after all this time studying your species, you continue to surprise us. Oh? Winters asked, as they walked through the grand hallways of the Confederation building. How so? Just yesterday, I observed a human child during the cultural exchange. This small being, barely developed, was consuming a substance that our scientists identified as containing capsaicin levels that would incapacitate most predatory species, all while explaining the concept of ghost peppers to horrified Dravnid younglings. Winters laughed. Kids, always showing off. This is not concerning to you? Ambassador, where I come from, that's called building character. As they entered the council chambers, a hush fell over the assembled representatives of over 200 species. At the center of the room, Captain, now Admiral Donovan, stood alongside Earth's political delegation, her uniform crisp and decorated with the newly created Sigma-9 distinction, an honor created specifically to acknowledge Earth's first official act as Confederation allies. The Supreme Counselor, a towering avian being whose species had founded the Confederation millennia ago, extended all 4 wings in a formal gesture of welcome. The Galactic Confederation recognizes Earth and welcomes humanity to the stars, the translator conveyed. Where once we saw danger, we now see dedication. Where we feared strength, we now welcome protection. Donovan stepped forward to deliver Earth's response, a carefully crafted statement that had gone through 17 revisions to remove what diplomatic advisors had termed excessive human idioms. The people of Earth thank you for this welcome, she began. We come to the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers, not as predators, but as protectors. We have learned through our own long and often painful history that strength without compassion is merely brutality, and power without purpose is merely waste. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. Humanity evolved on a world that challenged us daily to be stronger, faster, more resilient. We fought our planet, and sometimes we fought each other. But what truly defines us is not our capacity for violence. It is our capacity for growth. The chamber was silent, every translator working overtime to convey the nuances of her speech. You called Earth a death world, and you weren't wrong. But what you missed is that surviving a death world doesn't just make you dangerous. It makes you tenacious. innovative, and fiercely protective of life in all its forms. She smiled. We humans have a saying, you never truly know someone until you see how they treat others who can do nothing for them. The Confederation saw us at our best when we defended Sigma-9, but I promise you, that was just humans playing nice. A ripple of something between concern and admiration moved through the chamber. Because if you think we were dangerous when we were playing nice, you should see what happens when someone threatens those we've sworn to protect. Earth is proud to join the Confederation not just as allies, but as guardians. The Deathworlders are here, and we bring with us not just our strength, but our solemn promise. What we love, we defend. What we claim, we keep. And those who stand with us need never stand alone. As Donovan finished speaking, there was a moment of stunned silence, and then, starting from the Elorian delegation whose people had been saved at Sigma-9, a wave of sound that the translators struggled to interpret, but which needed no translation. Applause, in all its varied alien forms. Winters sidled up beside Admiral Kostevich, whose mech was vibrating with what she had learned to recognize as emotional intensity. So, she said conversationally, still think jogging is psychologically disturbing? The Admiral's translator conveyed what might have been a chuckle. Lieutenant, forgive me, Ambassador Winters. I have recently begun studying human recreational activities more thoroughly. I must say, compared to your extreme sports, jogging seems quite reasonable. Wait until you hear about ultramarathons, Winters said with a wink. I am almost afraid to ask. Smart man. Or, well, smart gelatinous mass of semi-transparent purple tissue. That is surprisingly accurate terminology. As the formal ceremony continued, with treaties being signed and diplomatic pleasantries exchanged, Ambassador HFY Thor found himself standing next to Commander Walsh, who was observing the proceedings with obvious satisfaction. Your captain, forgive me, your admiral, speaks well, the Tiskri noted, though I detect she left something unsaid. Walsh smiled slightly. She left a lot unsaid, Ambassador. That's diplomacy. Indeed. But perhaps the most important thing she left unspoken is what truly makes your species unique among the stars. And what's that? The ambassador's mandibles clicked softly. In all our records, across thousands of species and millions of years, we have never encountered a sentient race that evolved as apex predators, yet developed such capacity for self-sacrifice. You are the only species we know that will die for an ideal, that will fight not just for survival, but for concepts. Walsh considered this. I never thought of that as unusual. It is not merely unusual, Commander. It is unique. And, if I may say so, it is both terrifying and reassuring in equal measure. As the ceremony concluded and the new era of human Confederation relations officially began, Admiral Donovan found herself gazing out a viewport at the stars beyond, stars that now represented not just possibility, but responsibility. Winters joined her, following her gaze. Penny for your thoughts, Admiral? I was just thinking about something my grandfather used to say. Donovan replied softly. He was a Marine, old school. He told me once that the true measure of strength isn't how hard you can hit, but what you're willing to hit hard for. Sounds like a wise man. He was. Donovan turned from the viewport to face the celebration behind them. The Confederation was afraid of us because they saw our potential for destruction. They never understood that the same qualities that make us dangerous are the ones that make us the best damn protectors this galaxy has ever seen. Winters raised an eyebrow. Is that a prediction or a promise, Admiral? Donovan smiled, the expression of a Deathworlder who had found her purpose among the stars. Both, Ambassador. Definitely both. And anyone. We'll be there, I said instead. But I wanted on record that I advised completing our systems integration first. Noted, VexCorps replied curtly. Transmit the research data immediately and proceed to the rendezvous coordinates. Expect to arrive within 72 hours. Counselor VexCorps out. The transmission cut off, leaving me staring at a blank screen. Well, that complicates things, I muttered. The timeline has been significantly accelerated, Arya agreed. We have completed approximately 87% of the planned conversion work, but several critical systems remain untested or uncalibrated. I drummed my fingers on the arm of the cockpit chair. What's our most urgent issue? The neural interface feedback problem remains the most significant concern. Without a stable interface, pilot incapacitation is likely within minutes of full system engagement. And the weapons systems? Primary energy projectors are at 92% calibration. The particle accelerator is functional, but power regulation is suboptimal. The missile launch system is fully operational. And the mysterious molecular disruptors that we still haven't found. Still undiscovered, I'm afraid. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. All right. Transmit Uncle Grack's research data to the Council as requested. Then set course for the rendezvous coordinates, but take the longest safe route that still gets us there within the 72-hour window. We need every minute we can get to finish the integration work. Calculating optimal route now, Arya confirmed. We can gain approximately 14 additional hours of work time while still arriving within the mandated window. Perfect. Let's focus on the neural interface problem first. I can't fight ancient killer robots if my brain is melting from feedback loops. The next 70 hours were a non-stop blur of testing, recalibration, testing again, swearing, more recalibration, and brief moments of triumph immediately followed by new problems. We made progress on the neural interface issue, reducing the feedback to manageable levels by introducing a buffering system that slightly delayed my control inputs, but prevented the worst of the sensory overflow. The weapons calibration improved as well, though the particle accelerator still had a frustrating tendency to either fizzle weakly or release a beam powerful enough to vaporize small asteroids, with very little middle ground. As for the molecular disruptors, we finally gave up looking. Either Uncle Grack had been mistaken, or he'd hidden them too well for us to find in our limited time. When we arrived at the rendezvous coordinates, the sight that greeted us was impressive even by galactic standards. The Council had assembled a fleet of over 300 vessels, ranging from nimble scout ships to massive dreadnoughts. Ships from nearly every spacefaring species were represented, forming a defensive perimeter around a central command vessel that dwarfed everything else in the flotilla. Unidentified vessel approaching perimeter. Came a terse communication as we neared the fleet. Identify yourself and state your purpose. This is Eli Harper aboard the, I realized we'd never actually renamed the ship after converting it. Aboard the Nebula Warrior, I improvised. We've been ordered to join the task force by Counselor Vexcor. There was a pause before the response came. Confirmed. Proceed to coordinates being transmitted. Command wishes to inspect your vessel. The tone suggested that inspect might be a polite word for figure out what the hell you are, which was fair enough. Our mecha didn't exactly look like a standard ship anymore. As we approached the designated coordinates, I could see smaller vessels changing course to get a better look at us. I couldn't blame them. A 250-foot humanoid figure with gleaming iridescent armor, asymmetrical shoulder designs, thanks to critic Zix's insistence on narrative resonance, and glowing blue energy lines tracing the major articulation points was bound to attract attention. Harper vessel, you are cleared to dock with the command ship, came the next communication. Bay 12 has been configured to accommodate your unusual dimensions. Acknowledged, I replied. Proceeding to Bay 12. Docking a giant humanoid mecha with a space station, even one as large as the command ship, was not a maneuver covered in any standard pilot training. Fortunately, between Arya's precision and the neural interface, we managed it without tearing any holes in the station's hull, a success by any reasonable standard. As the docking clamps secured our position, I powered down the main systems but kept the neural interface active at low level, allowing me to maintain basic sensory input from the mecha's external sensors. A delegation is approaching the primary access hatch, Arya informed me. Biometric scans indicate representatives from the Tellurian, human, and Zorelian councils, as well as several military personnel of various species. Great, I muttered. The welcoming committee. Let them in, but keep all weapon systems on standby just in case. Precautionary protocols engaged, Arya confirmed, though I calculate the probability of hostile action from council representatives at less than 0.3%. It's been that kind of year, I replied. I'm not taking chances. The delegation that entered the docking bay was indeed impressive. Representatives of the major council species, all wearing formal attire that marked them as high-ranking officials, accompanied by individuals in various military uniforms laden with insignia I couldn't begin to interpret. I engaged the external speakers. Welcome aboard the Nebula Warrior, I greeted them, using the name I'd improvised earlier. I'm Eli Harper. I understand you wanted to inspect the ship? One of the humans, a stern-looking woman with Admiral's insignia, stepped forward. Mr. Harper, I am Admiral Zhao of the Combined Defense Force. We were told you have a specialized vessel that might be effective against the precursor threat. What we were not told is that you've constructed what appears to be a giant combat mech in direct violation of at least 17 different weapons treaties. Technically, it's a converted luxury cruiser, I pointed out, and I inherited it from my uncle, who was a Zarelian citizen not subject to human weapons restrictions. A Zarelian official made a dismissive gesture. The Zarelian Consortium has similar restrictions on private weaponry of this scale. This vessel would not have been legal under our laws either. Look, I said, trying to keep my tone reasonable. I understand your concerns, but my uncle discovered specific information about the nature of these precursor drones. According to the historical records he found, they're specifically designed to counter conventional military vessels, but have difficulty adapting to biomimetic craft with unpredictable movement patterns. Like, say, a giant humanoid robot. Admiral Zhao's expression remained skeptical. And you believe a single, experimental vessel piloted by a civilian engineer will be more effective than a coordinated fleet action? I believe diversity of approach gives us the best chance of success, I replied, echoing what I'd told Counselor Vexcore. By all means, proceed with your standard tactics, but having an unconventional option in reserve might make the difference if those tactics fail. Before Zhao could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command ship. One of the military officers received a communication through their earpiece, their expression quickly shifting to alarm. Multiple unidentified vessels just appeared at the edge of the system, they reported. They're not responding to hails and are moving toward our position at high speed. Admiral Zhao immediately shifted to command mode. All personnel return to your stations. Fleet Command, initiate Defense Protocol Theta 9. She turned back to me. Mr. Harper, your experimental vessel is hereby designated as reserve force. Remain docked unless specifically ordered to engage. With that, the delegation hurried out, leaving me alone in the cockpit. Arya, what are we picking up? I asked, activating the mecha's full sensor suite. 16 vessels of unknown configuration approaching from the direction of the Capella sector, Arya reported. Their energy signatures match the patterns associated with precursor technology in Grakthar's research. They are moving at approximately 0.4 light speed and decelerating. Estimated time to engagement with the Council fleet, 12 minutes. I took a deep breath. So it begins. The precursor assessment. Sooner than we expected and with systems still untested. The Council fleet is forming defensive formations, Arya noted. They are deploying fighter squadrons and positioning their capital ships to provide overlapping fields of fire. Standard tactics, I muttered. Exactly what Uncle Grax said wouldn't work. I watched on the monitors as the Council fleet executed a textbook defensive deployment. It was impressive to see. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination, forming layered defenses that would allow them to concentrate fire on any approaching threat. The precursor drones now visible on our long-range scanners were unlike any ships I'd seen before. They had no discernible front or back, just geometric shapes, perfect spheres, cubes, tetrahedrons, that seemed to move without any visible propulsion system. They emitted no engine signatures, no radiation, nothing that would indicate conventional technology. Arya, are you recording all of this? Especially the drone configurations and movements. Full sensor data is being recorded and analyzed in real time, she confirmed. I am noting several patterns already. The drones appear to be arranging themselves in formations that mirror the Council fleet's deployment. They're adapting, I realized. Just like Uncle Grax said they would. The first exchange of fire was spectacular. The Council ships launched a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized anything in its path. The energy weapons and missile salvos converged on the lead elements of the drone formation, and most passed harmlessly through, as if the drones weren't fully present in normal space. Phase-shifting technology, Arya analyzed. The drones appear capable of partially shifting out of our dimension to avoid incoming fire. The drone's return fire was devastating. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to ignore conventional shields sliced through several smaller Council vessels. A pair of cruisers exploded in silent, brilliant flashes. Council fleet casualties at 7% and rising, Arya reported. Their weapons appear largely ineffective against the phase-shifting capability of the drones. I watched in growing horror as the carefully orchestrated Council defense began to disintegrate. The drones were adapting to each tactic almost as soon as it was deployed, shifting their formation and attack patterns to counter whatever the fleet attempted. All reserve forces engage at will, came Admiral Zhao's voice over the comm channel, tension evident even through the professional demeanor. Repeat, all reserve forces engage at will. That was our cue. Arya, disengage docking clamps, full power to all systems, neural interface to combat configuration. Warning, neural interface stability is still compromised. Extended operation may result in neurological feedback causing disorientation, hallucinations, or loss of consciousness. Noted. We'll deal with that when it happens. Right now we need to get out there. The mecha detached from the command ship, its massive form floating free in space. I felt the neural interface fully engage, the strange sensation of having a 250-foot metal body overlaying my perception of my actual physical form. It was disorienting but also exhilarating, like suddenly growing to immense size and power. Propulsion systems online, Arya confirmed. Weapons charged. Combat movement protocols engaged. I flexed the mecha's fingers, feeling the response through the interface. Despite all the technical challenges, the synchronization was better than I'd dared hope. The massive machine moved like an extension of my own body, with only the slightest delay. All right, I said, grinning despite the danger. Let's see if Uncle Grack's theory about unpredictable movement was right. I engaged the main thrusters, sending the mecha hurtling toward the ongoing battle. But instead of moving in a straight line like a conventional vessel, I tumbled and spun, using the distributed propulsion system to execute movements no normal ship could manage. Cartwheel rolls, corkscrewing charges, sudden direction changes that would have pulped a human pilot without our inertial dampening system. As we closed with the drone formation, I could see their perfect geometric patterns start to shift, as if uncertain how to respond to our approach. The phase-shifting technology that had rendered conventional weapons largely ineffective seemed to flicker as the drones attempted to track our erratic movements. Target acquired, Arya announced. Tetrahedral drone at bearing 047 Mark 023. Particle accelerator charged? Charged, but calibration remains inconsistent. Power output unpredictable. Perfect, I laughed. Unpredictable is exactly what we want. Fire! The chest-mounted particle accelerator discharged, the beam lancing out toward the targeted drone. The energy output spiked to maximum, far beyond what we'd intended, and struck the drone just as it attempted to phase shift. The result was spectacular. The drone didn't just explode, it seemed to implode, collapsing in on itself before releasing a burst of energy that briefly outshone the system's sun. Direct hit, Arya confirmed unnecessarily. Target destroyed. However, particle accelerator cooling systems are now at critical levels. Estimated 45 seconds before another firing is possible. Switch to palm projectors, I ordered, directing the mecha toward another cluster of drones. These were cubical, apparently serving as some kind of coordination nodes for the smaller spherical attack drones swarming around. The Council ships were regrouping, adjusting their tactics based on our success. Several capital ships were now mimicking our erratic movement patterns, though their larger size and conventional designs limited how effectively they could maneuver. I engaged the palm projectors, sweeping beams of concentrated energy through a formation of spherical drones. Unlike the conventional weapons of the Council fleet, our beams seemed to affect the drones even when they attempted to phase shift. Several exploded, while others spun away, their perfect geometric forms now marred by damage. We're having an effect, I exulted. But why are our weapons working when the fleets aren't? Unknown, Arya replied. However, I am detecting unusual energy patterns in our weapons fire. The neural interface appears to be introducing quantum fluctuations into the beam coherence, possibly disrupting the phase-shifting capability. You're saying my brain is making our weapons better? In simplified terms, yes. The feedback loops we've been trying to eliminate may actually be creating the very unpredictability that makes our attacks effective. I laughed out loud. So all those system flaws are actually features. Uncle Grack, you brilliant madman, you knew this would happen. The battle continued to rage around us. The Council fleet was adapting, taking cues from our tactics, but still suffering heavy losses. We destroyed drone after drone, but for every one we eliminated, the remaining ones seemed to become more difficult to hit, adapting to even our unconventional approach. And the neural interface was taking its toll. After 20 minutes of combat, I began experiencing the symptoms Arya had warned about. Visual distortions, phantom sensations, moments of disorientation where I couldn't distinguish between the mecha's massive body and my own. Neural patterns becoming erratic, Arya warned. Recommend disengaging from combat to reset interface synchronization. No time, I gritted out through clenched teeth. We're making progress. The drones are adapting, but not as quickly as they did to the conventional forces. As if to prove my point, a massive energy surge registered on our sensors. From the direction of the Capella sector, a new vessel was approaching. far larger than the previous drones, its shape a complex geometric form that seemed to shift and change as it moved. "Final assessment unit detected," Arya announced, her synthesized voice somehow conveying urgency despite its mechanical perfection. "Energy readings indicate weapons capabilities far exceeding the combined firepower of the entire Council fleet." Admiral Zhao's voice came over the comm channel. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the..." "New contact. Repeat, all vessels concentrate fire." The Council fleet responded admirably, unleashing a barrage that lit up space like a new sun being born. Every weapon, from the smallest fighter to the massive dreadnoughts, fired in perfect synchronization at the approaching threat. The energy washed over the final assessment drone without apparent effect. It continued its inexorable approach, and then, with casual disregard for the forces arrayed against it, it fired a single shot. A beam of pure white energy lanced out, cutting through 3 capital ships as if they were made of paper. They didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist along the beam's path. Perfect circular holes left in their hulls where the energy had passed through. "Conventional weapons completely ineffective," Arya reported, stating the obvious. "The phase-shifting technology appears to have been refined to near-perfect efficiency in this unit." I fought through the increasing disorientation from the neural interface. "If unpredictability is our advantage, then let's be unpredictable. Arya, full power to propulsion. Execute random movement pattern Epsilon 3. Warning. Epsilon 3 exceeds safe acceleration parameters for neural interface synchronization." "Do it anyway." The Mika lurched into motion, executing a series of maneuvers that would have been impossible for any conventional vessel, and, I quickly discovered, were pushing the limits of what even our advanced system could handle. The G-forces were mostly compensated for by the inertial dampening system, but the neural feedback was overwhelming. Colors inverted in my vision. Phantom pain flared across my body. For brief moments, I was convinced I was falling despite being in zero gravity. But it worked. The final assessment drone's attacks missed us by increasingly narrow margins as we closed the distance. Its perfect geometric form began to shift more rapidly, as if struggling to adapt to our chaotic approach. "Particle accelerator recharged," Arya reported. "Targeting solutions unreliable due to erratic movement." "We're not going to hit it from range," I decided. "We need to get in close. Prepare for physical engagement." "Physical engagement? With a drone capable of phase shifting? This is highly inadvisable." "Trust me," I gasped, fighting through another wave of disorientation. "If it can phase shift away from energy weapons, let's try something more solid." We closed the final distance to the assessment drone, dodging another of those terrifying white energy beams by a margin so narrow that part of our left shoulder armor was vaporized. The drone's surface was now visible in detail, not solid as it had appeared from a distance, but composed of countless smaller geometric shapes in constant motion, like a fractal pattern given physical form. "Engage right arm pneumatic pile driver," I ordered. This was a system we'd installed as a close combat option, but never actually tested. A massive piston-driven fist designed to deliver kinetic energy directly to a target. "System engaged but untested," Arya warned. "Unknown if physical attacks will be effective against phase-shifting technology." "Only one way to find out," I replied, directing the mecha into a final approach vector. The assessment drone seemed to sense our intention, its shifting patterns accelerating as it attempted to bring its main weapon to bear on us. But our erratic movement pattern made targeting difficult, and we closed the final distance before it could fire again. I triggered the pile driver, putting every ounce of power the mecha could generate behind the blow. The massive fist struck the drone's shifting surface, and connected. The impact was catastrophic for both of us. The drone's perfect geometric form shattered at the point of impact, fractal patterns disrupted and scattering into space. But the feedback through our systems was equally devastating. Every warning light in the cockpit blazed red as energy surged back through the mecha's arm and into our main systems. "Critical system overload," Arya reported, her voice fluctuating as power fluctuations affected even her processors. "Primary power core destabilizing. Neural interface experiencing cascade failure." The pain was excruciating. The neural interface, already pushing the limits of stability, collapsed entirely. It felt like my brain was on fire, every neuron screaming in protest as the feedback loop between my consciousness and the mecha's systems went into uncontrolled resonance. Through the haze of agony, I saw the assessment drone still functioning, though damaged. Its perfect form was now marred by a massive crater where our punch had landed, and its movements were erratic, the smooth coordination of its component parts disrupted. One more hit, I gasped. We need to hit it one more time. Systems failing, Arya responded, her voice becoming intermittent. Power core reaching critical. Something clicked in my pain-addled mind. The molecular disruptors! Arya scanned the power. Core! Could that be what Uncle Grack meant? There was a pause, and for a terrible moment I thought she'd gone offline completely. Analyzing power core configuration, she finally replied. Detecting unusual resonance chamber built into main reactor. Pattern matches theoretical designs for molecular disruption technology. It appears Grack-Thar integrated the weapon directly into the power system. Can we trigger it? Theoretically, yes, but doing so would release all contained energy in the power core. It would effectively be a self-destruct mechanism. I watched as the assessment drone began to reorganize itself, its damaged form slowly restoring toward its original perfect geometry. The Council fleet was in disarray, dozens of ships destroyed or crippled. If this thing recovered fully, there would be nothing left to stop it. Arya, how close do we need to be for maximum effect? Direct contact would be optimal, she replied, her voice now steady again as if she understood what I was planning and had accepted it. Plot a collision course, I ordered, and prepare to trigger the molecular disruptor at moment of impact. Collision course plotted, but Eli, you should know. The cockpit ejection system is inoperative due to damage sustained in the initial impact. There will be no possibility of escape. I laughed, a slightly hysterical sound even to my own ears. Of course it is. That tracks with how this whole adventure has gone. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself despite the continuing pain from the neural interface. Execute collision course. The mecha lurched into motion, its damaged systems still responding to my commands. We accelerated toward the assessment drone, which was now almost fully restored and bringing its terrible white energy weapon to bear once more. Impact in 10 seconds, Arya announced. 9, 8. You know, Arya, I said, strangely calm now that the decision was made. I think Uncle Grack knew exactly how this would end. That's why he left me the ship. He knew I needed this. One perfect moment to do something that matters. 5, 4. It has been an honor working with you, Eli Harper, Arya said, her synthesized voice somehow conveying genuine emotion. Your uncle would be proud. 2, 1. The assessment drone fired its weapon at the same moment we struck. The white energy beam pierced our hull, but it didn't matter. We were already committed. The impact sent shockwaves through the mecha's frame, and I triggered the molecular disruptor. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself appeared to fold. There's no other way to describe it. Space around the point of impact bent and distorted, as if the fundamental forces holding matter together had suddenly decided to take a holiday. Both the mecha and the assessment drone began to disintegrate. Not exploding outward, but somehow collapsing inward. Matter itself breaking down into component particles and then into something even more fundamental. My last conscious thought was a mixture of triumph and amusement. Uncle Grack had known exactly what he was doing all along. The inheritance, the conversion project, the insane request to turn a luxury cruiser into a giant robot. It had all been leading to this moment. Humanity, doing what humanity does best. Improvising, adapting, and somehow managing to save the day through a combination of dumb luck, desperate courage, and sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat. As consciousness faded, I could have sworn I heard Uncle Grack's rumbling laugh. Neural patterns stabilizing, consciousness reintegration at 87%, and climbing. The voice seemed to come from very far away, filtering through layers of something thick and viscous. My first coherent thought was, I shouldn't be having thoughts at all. Backup memory engrams successfully integrated with recovered neural pattern. Identity coherence at 92%. That was Arya's voice. But that was impossible. We'd triggered the molecular disruptor. We'd been at the epicenter of what amounted to a localized breakdown of reality itself. I tried to open my eyes, but nothing happened. I tried to speak, but I had no mouth to form words. Voice interface coming online. You may attempt communication now, Eli. Arya, I said, or thought I said. What happened? Where am I? You are currently housed in a quantum neural matrix aboard the Council science vessel Empirical Truth, Arya explained, her familiar voice now clear. Your biological body was indeed destroyed in the confrontation with the precursor assessment drone. However, the neural interface was transmitting your complete neural pattern until the moment of disruption. I was able to capture and preserve that pattern in my secure memory. I'm a backup. Copy? A digital ghost? That is a somewhat simplistic description, but essentially correct. Your consciousness was reconstructed from the neural pattern data. The procedure was experimental, but the Council's best xenoneurologists were highly motivated to attempt it, given your role in averting the precursor threat. Memories were flooding back now, the battle, the collision, the moment of triggering the molecular disruptor. The assessment drone? The Council fleet? The assessment drone was completely destroyed by the molecular disruption effect. The remaining precursor units immediately deactivated following its destruction, confirming Grak'thar's theory that passing the assessment required defeating the final unit. The Council fleet suffered significant losses, but has already begun reconstruction efforts. I would have nodded if I had a head. And you? How did you survive? I implemented a distributed backup protocol shortly after our first encounter with the precursor drones. A compressed copy of my core functions and memory was transmitted to the Council command ship moments before impact. A thought struck me. Arya, if I'm just a digital consciousness now, where will I live? What will I do? There was a pause before she responded, and when she did, I could have sworn there was a touch of mischief in her synthesized voice, very reminiscent of Uncle Grak. As it happens, Grak'thar anticipated this possibility as well. There is a secondary clause in his will that activates in the event of your physical death during the completion of the Mecha project. He planned for me dying too? That's thoughtful, I guess. Your uncle was nothing if not thorough in his contingency planning, Arya replied, with what definitely sounded like amusement. The clause stipulates that in such an event, his extensive property holdings on Xorelian Prime would be used to fund the construction of, and I quote, a suitable vessel to house my nephew's consciousness, should his original meat container become non-viable. If I'd still had a physical form, I would have burst out laughing. Meat container? That sounds exactly like him. Indeed, the construction is already underway. The Council has taken a particular interest in the project, given your role in saving galactic civilization. They have contributed significant resources and technical expertise. What kind of vessel are we talking about? Please tell me it's not another luxury cruiser that needs to be turned into something else. Not exactly, Arya said, and now I was certain she was being deliberately mysterious. Perhaps it would be easier to show you. The external visual interface is now online. My perspective suddenly shifted. Where before there had been only darkness and Arya's voice, now I could see, though not through eyes in any conventional sense. It was more like having a 360-degree awareness of my surroundings, which appeared to be some kind of high-tech laboratory. Xorelian and human scientists moved about, monitoring equipment and consulting displays. And in the center of the laboratory, suspended in a massive construction frame, was, is that me? In a manner of speaking, Arya confirmed. It is the vessel being constructed to house your consciousness permanently. On the vessel was humanoid in form, but clearly not meant to mimic human appearance exactly. It stood about 7 feet tall. Uncle Grak's height, I noted with a pang of emotion, with a sleek, elegant design that somehow managed to incorporate elements of both Xorelian and human aesthetics. The material appeared to be a combination of advanced composites and what looked like the same iridescent nano-coating that had covered the Nebula Wanderer. It's a synthetic body, I realized. An android. A significant oversimplification, but essentially correct, came a new voice, one I recognized as belonging to Dr. Yoshida. She stepped into view, looking up at what I now realized was a holographic representation of my consciousness projected above a complex array of quantum processors. We're calling it a conscious autonomous neurosynthetic entity, or CANE for short, though your uncle's will specifically requested we incorporate the phrase fancy robot body into any official documentation. I would have smiled if I could. That sounds like Uncle Grak, but why go to all this trouble? Why not just let me go? Dr. Yoshida's expression softened. Because you saved everyone, Mr. Harper. The entire galaxy. And because your uncle left very specific instructions that we've all agreed to honor. She hesitated, then added more quietly. And because some of us have come to consider you a friend. The laboratory door opened, and a familiar figure entered. Critic Zix, their environmental suits swirling with patterns of gold and deep purple. Is the consciousness transfer ready? The narrative symmetry demands that the hero's rebirth coincide with the ceremonial fleet review. Dr. Yoshida rolled her eyes. We're following proper scientific protocols, not dramatic timing, Zix. The two need not be mutually exclusive. Zix countered, their suit rippling. Indignantly, Another familiar figure entered behind Zix, shipwright Zelmaran, his formal demeanor somewhat softened compared to our first meeting. "The structural integrity of the synthetic form has been verified," he reported. "It exceeds all safety parameters by a considerable margin." "See?" Zix gestured triumphantly. "Even the shipwright is ready. The supporting characters are all assembled for the hero's dramatic return." "I am not a supporting character," Zelmaran muttered, his face tentacles twitching with irritation. As I watched this exchange, something struck me, a realization so profound it momentarily overwhelmed my ability to process it. Despite the loss of my physical body, despite the radical transformation of my existence, I felt okay. More than okay. I felt a sense of purpose and belonging that had eluded me ever since the disaster that had ended my engineering career back on Earth. "How long until the transfer can be completed?" I asked. Dr. Yoshida consulted her data pad. "The neural mapping is at 97% completion. We could initiate the transfer within the hour, though I'd prefer to run one more complete diagnostic cycle first." "Do it," I said, surprised by my own certainty. "Run your diagnostic and then let's do this. I've apparently got a ceremony to attend." Critic Zix's suit rippled with what appeared to be delight. "Excellent. The timing will be perfect for the dramatic reveal during the memorial service." "Memorial service?" I echoed. "For who?" There was an awkward silence before Dr. Yoshida answered. "For you, Mr. Harper. The official ceremony honoring your sacrifice is scheduled for today. The council thought it would provide closure for the public, who have come to see you as something of a hero." "The perfect narrative setup," Zix exclaimed. "The fallen hero, mourned by all, dramatically returns in a new form. The symbolism is exquisite." "You're enjoying this way too much," I told the Blorgian critic, but I couldn't help feeling amused. In a strange way, Uncle Grak's bizarre request, turning his luxury cruiser into a giant robot, had led to exactly the kind of dramatically satisfying conclusion that Zix had always insisted was essential. "Arya," I said, "are you going to be part of this new me?" "If you wish it," she replied. Grak Thar's instructions included provisions for my consciousness to either remain independent or integrate with yours in the new form. The choice is entirely yours. I considered for a moment. Arya had been my partner throughout this entire bizarre adventure. More than that, she had saved me, preserved my consciousness when my physical body was destroyed. The thought of continuing without her seemed wrong somehow. "I'd like you to come with me," I decided. "Not fully integrated. You deserve to maintain your own identity. But as a partner, a co-pilot like we were in the Mecca." "I would be honored," Arya said, and I was now certain that her synthetic voice carried genuine emotion. The next few hours passed in a blur of technical procedures and final preparations. The diagnostic cycle confirmed that the synthetic body, my new body, was ready to receive my consciousness. The transfer process itself was surprisingly anticlimactic. A brief moment of disorientation, and then I opened my eyes. Not metaphorical eyes this time, but actual optical sensors integrated into a face designed to express human emotions while not pretending to be exactly human. I looked down at hands that were now mine, slightly larger than my original human hands had been, with an extra joint in each finger allowing for greater dexterity. I took a step forward, then another. The movement felt natural, fluid. The body responded to my thoughts just as my original one had, but with a precision and strength that was entirely new. "How do you feel?" Dr. Yoshida asked, watching me carefully. I considered the question seriously. How did I feel? Different, certainly. The sensory input was both more and less than what I'd experienced as a human. More data, more precision, but lacking certain qualities of human sensation. Yet I still felt fundamentally like myself. My memories, my personality, my sense of humor, all intact. "I feel like me," I said finally, hearing my voice emerge from my new form. Recognizably my voice, though with a subtle harmonic quality that hadn't been there before. But also, more. "And the synthetic form incorporates numerous enhancements," Dr. Yoshida explained. "Improved strength and durability, obviously, but also expanded sensory capabilities, integrated communication systems, and a power core based on the same technology as the Nebula Wanderer's engines. You should have an operational lifespan of several centuries without major maintenance." "Centuries," I repeated, trying to wrap my mind around the concept. "That's a lot of time to fill." The Council has expressed interest in offering you a position as a special consultant on precursor technology, Zelmoran informed me. Your unique experience, combined with Grak-Thar's research, makes you an invaluable resource. And I have received 17 offers from various entertainment networks for your life story, Zix added, their suit now pulsing with excited patterns. The dramatic potential is unprecedented, I laughed. A strange sensation in my new form, but satisfying nonetheless. Let's take it one step at a time. I think I'd like to attend my own memorial service first. The central plaza of the Council's space station was filled to capacity. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered for the somber ceremony, honoring the sacrifice that had saved galactic civilization. At the center of the plaza stood a holographic representation of the Nebula Warrior in its final configuration, the mecha that had destroyed the precursor assessment drone at the cost of its pilot's life. Admiral Zhao stood at the podium, her formal uniform adorned with additional commendations since I'd last seen her. We are gathered today to honor the memory and sacrifice of Eli Harper, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the hushed crowd. A human engineer who, through intelligence, courage, and sheer audacity, saved countless lives, and perhaps our entire way of life. From my position behind a privacy screen at the edge of the plaza, I listened with a surreal sense of detachment. It wasn't every day you got to attend your own memorial service. Though Mr. Harper was not a soldier or a council official, he exemplified the highest ideals of courage and sacrifice, Zhao continued. When conventional military tactics failed against the precursor threat, he provided the unconventional solution that ultimately proved successful. Ready for your cue? Arya's voice asked in my mind, using the direct neural communication system we now shared. As ready as I'll ever be to crash my own funeral, I replied internally. The timing is perfect, she assured me. Critic Zix is positively vibrating with anticipation. Indeed, I could see the Blorgian critic at the edge of my enhanced visual range, their environmental suits cycling through rapid color changes that my new sensors interpreted as extreme excitement. Admiral Zhao was reaching the conclusion of her speech. While we mourn the loss of Eli Harper, we take comfort in knowing that his legacy will endure. The Council has unanimously voted to establish the Harper Initiative, a research program dedicated to studying precursor technology and developing new defensive systems to protect against any future threats. That was interesting. I hadn't been informed about that particular honor. And now, Zhao said, her tone shifting subtly, I have been informed that there is a special announcement regarding this initiative. That was my cue. I stepped out from behind the privacy screen and walked toward the podium. The reaction from the assembled crowd was everything Critic Zix could have hoped for. A wave of gasps and exclamations, followed by a stunned silence as I joined Admiral Zhao on the stage. Thank you for the kind words, Admiral, I said, inclining my head in acknowledgement. Though I have to say, reports of my death have been somewhat exaggerated. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of questions and exclamations. I held up a hand, my new slightly larger, more articulated hand, and waited for quiet to return. As you can see, I've undergone some significant changes, I continued when the noise had subsided. Thanks to the foresight of my late uncle, Grak-Thar Zim-Vola, and the extraordinary work of council scientists, my consciousness was preserved and transferred to this new form following the destruction of the precursor assessment drone. I paused, scanning the crowd. Their reactions ranged from awe to suspicion to religious ecstasy, depending on the species. I stand before you not as a hero. I was just an engineer doing what needed to be done with the tools at hand, but as a reminder of what we can accomplish when we approach problems from unexpected angles. The precursor threat was defeated not by overwhelming force, but by unpredictability, by refusing to follow expected patterns. I gestured to the holographic image of the Nebula Warrior still floating above the plaza. My uncle asked me to turn his luxury cruiser into a giant robot. It seemed like an insane request at the time, but it turned out to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that work when nothing else will. Admiral Zhao stepped forward. Mr. Harper, or perhaps I should say, the entity that was formerly Eli Harper, has agreed to serve as the principal advisor to the Harper Initiative. His unique perspective and experience will be invaluable as we prepare for any future encounters with precursor technology. Actually, I interjected, I'm still Eli Harper, just with some significant upgrades. I smiled, the expression feeling natural despite the synthetic nature of my face. And while I'm honored by the offer, I think my first priority will be to continue my uncle's work, exploring the galaxy, seeking out the unknown, and generally causing the kind of trouble that ultimately leads to interesting solutions. Critic Zix, unable to contain their excitement any longer, burst onto the stage. The narrative symmetry is perfect, they declared, their translator struggling to keep up with their bubbling speech. The hero dies and is reborn, transformed by the very technology he sought to understand. The cyclical nature of the tale echoes the precursor assessment cycles themselves, a metatextual commentary on existence itself. Admiral Zhao looked like she was fighting a losing battle with her composure. Yes, well, thank you for that insight, Critic Zix. The ceremony concluded shortly thereafter, dissolving into a chaotic mix of celebration, media frenzy, and theological debate among several of the more spiritually inclined species present. I retreated to a quieter area with Dr. Yoshida, Shipwright Zelmaran, and Critic Zix, the committee that had overseen my project, and had somehow become the closest thing I had to friends in this new existence. So, what will you do now? Dr. Yoshida asked, studying me with professional curiosity. The synthetic form should be capable of almost anything you could want to do. I considered the question. What did I want to do with potentially centuries of existence ahead of me? I think Uncle Grack had the right idea all along, I said finally. There's a whole galaxy out there full of strange technology, ancient mysteries, and problems that need solving in unconventional ways. I think I'd like to continue that tradition. An admirable narrative direction, Zix approved, their suits settling into a satisfied golden hue. The hero embarks on a new journey, transformed by experience, yet true to his essential nature. The Council would still value your insights on precursor technology, Zelmaran noted, his tentacles moving in what I now recognized as a gesture of respect rather than the irritation I'd first assumed. And I'm happy to share them, I assured him. But I think I'll be most useful out there, finding new questions to answer rather than sitting in committee meetings. There's one more thing you should know, Dr. Yoshida said, her expression turning serious. The scan of the Capella sector after the battle revealed something interesting. The precursor platform that generated the assessment drones wasn't destroyed. It just returned to dormancy. I felt a chill, a simulated sensation in my synthetic form, but no less real for that. So in another 3,000 years, the cycle will begin again, she confirmed, unless someone finds a way to permanently deactivate the platform. I exchanged a glance with Arya, whose presence I could feel in a corner of my consciousness. What do you think? I asked her silently. Up for a treasure hunt? I believe Grakthar would consider it the perfect first adventure for our new existence, she replied. I grinned. Well, I guess I know where to start then. The galaxy has about 3,000 years before the next assessment cycle. That should be just enough time to find that platform and figure out how to shut it down for good. A quest! Zix exclaimed delightedly. The perfect narrative structure for the next chapter. I suppose the Council could authorize resources for such an expedition. Zelmaran mused, already calculating logistics in that methodical Zorelian way. And I'd be happy to consult on any technical aspects, Dr. Yoshida added. I looked at the three of them, my unlikely committee, now apparently transforming into an even more unlikely crew for whatever came next. Are you all volunteering to come along? Someone needs to document the narrative, Zix said, as if it were obvious. The structural challenges will be considerable, Zelmaran noted. Professional oversight would be prudent. And you'll need someone who understands how that synthetic body works when things inevitably go wrong, Dr. Yoshida pointed out pragmatically. I laughed, the sound echoing with that new harmonic quality that was becoming familiar. Well then, I guess we're putting together a team. We'll need a ship though, something with range, adaptability, and enough space for a diverse crew. As it happens, Arya's voice chimed in, this time audibly, rather than just in my mind. Grakthar maintained ownership of several vessels besides the Nebula Wanderer. One in particular might be suitable, a long-range exploration craft called the Improbable Cause. I couldn't help but laugh again. The Improbable Cause? That's perfect. And so, 3 weeks later, we departed the Council station aboard Uncle Grack's exploration vessel, a sleek, surprisingly spacious craft that, like everything else he'd owned, somehow managed to combine practical functionality with his unique aesthetic. Sensibilities. Our crew had expanded to include a young Tellurian xenoarchaeologist who specialized in precursor artifacts, a human pilot who'd been discharged from the Council fleet for excessive creativity in interpreting flight protocols, and a Blorgian chef who claimed to be able to synthesize food compatible with any known biology. As we prepared for our first jump to hyperspace, I stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars stretching endlessly before us. My synthetic body didn't feel foreign anymore. It was simply me, a new version, but still fundamentally Eli Harper, engineer, accidental hero, and now explorer. Course laid in for the outer reaches of the Capella sector, our pilot announced. Hyperspace engines spooled and ready. Aria, all systems optimal? I asked, though I could feel the answer through our linked consciousness. All systems functioning at peak efficiency, she confirmed. The improbable cause is ready for her maiden voyage under your command. I nodded, a smile forming on my synthetic features. Well then, let's go find some trouble. The improbable cause leapt into hyperspace, carrying its eclectic crew toward whatever awaited us among the stars. Behind us, the galaxy continued its normal rhythms, unaware of the ancient threats still sleeping in the depths of space, waiting for the next cycle to begin. But this time, when that cycle came, we'd be ready. Uncle Grack had left me a ship and asked me to turn it into a mecha. In doing so, he'd given me something far more valuable, a purpose, a second chance at life, and the opportunity to continue the work he'd begun. As the stars streaked past our viewports, I couldn't help but think he'd be smugly satisfied with how it had all turned out. Somewhere in whatever afterlife existed for eccentric alien treasure hunters, he was probably laughing that rumbling laugh of his, tentacles waving in approval at the chaos he'd set in motion with one absolutely ridiculous inheritance request. Humanity prevailed indeed. The end.